Our enemies, they play up and for that particular country has greater that should that we are we want therefore to develop our own community and an African personality. Others may feel that they have evolved the very best way of life, but we are not bound, like slavish imitators, to accept it as our mold. If we find the methods used by others are suitable to our social environment, we shall adopt or adapt them. If we find them unsuitable, we shall reject them. Fighters for African freedom, I appeal to
this fellow standing here, I started working for myself when I was 27 years old. 27. Just like you. Never say you are too young to start a business. If I was to start again, I would start working for myself at 23 or 24. I missed out on a few years. So you are the guys that can change this economy. Do not underrate your capacity, your capability, inherent capability, because of an advantage called young age. Many of you think that you are disadvantaged because of age. I can tell you, if there was a shop, there was a market where one would go and buy age, I would pay a lot of millions of kwacha to buy young age. So I can do the things that I couldn't do when I was young. But I am consoled by the fact that I see the price I could pay for a young age, I see it in you. So what we couldn't do, you the young people must do, because you are privileged to be young. I hope you are listening to what I'm saying. You miss to do things as a young person you regret. Because when you are young, nobody pays too much attention to you. That's the time you can do great things. When you are young, there are less stories told about you. That's when you can do things, great things. By the time you grow older, slightly older, people pay attention to your name because you're on television. You will have already taken the critical steps towards success. I hope we are together here. Take advantage of your youth to do great things in education, skills development, entrepreneurship, innovation. Our duty is to give you the opportunities, and I'll be talking about these opportunities shortly. Yours is to seize these opportunities, to take them with both hands. Waiona opportunity kuigwira pamkosi. Wagwira pamkosi. Osa ileka iyai. Kugwira na manja yabini. I can tell you from my little experience, from my scenes of where I come from, in terms of professional background, business background, I took charge of the opportunities I found at a young age and never left them and squeezed them. Got these opportunities to work for me and my family. That is why I retired at 43 years old. 43 I retired to do what? To work for the people of Zambia. So I could work with others to create the opportunities for the youth, to have the opportunities that I had. And I'll say one or so of these things in my messaging today. So please don't underrate this asset called the youth, young age, the energy, the health, the longevity. Yes, God can take life, but on average, you live longer. You have a longer life than me. And then Kangwa here and Mutati there. And even Agatuntulu. So take advantage. I will harp around this issue. Be positive. See through the wall. See through the dark. In the dark room, you can see. Vision. Ichimonwa. Take advantage. I'll say this over and over. Don't mourn on ground. Arise and soar. That's what young people do. When you are in school, focus on school. Focus on school. Everything has its own time. You want to succeed? Focus on what you are supposed to do for that particular time. It's an investment. It's a building block. It will lead you to greater things. So don't waste your youth. I believe you've got my message. Loud and clear. The youth must embrace what is about.
I listened to the Chinese president speaking in eloquent Mandarin, saying how the relationship between Africa and China is a mutually beneficial relationship. He spoke about Africa as if it was one country. He did not remind himself, in my mind, that there are 55 countries in Africa, or 54 if you ask Morocco. And I listened to the Chinese president specifically mentioning the Gambia and a few words on Sao Tome and Principe, that they were welcomed back to the world because they had renounced their relationship with Taiwan and they had now recognized the one China policy. Do I say this because there is anything wrong with China? No. I'm saying this because the Chinese are providing leadership for their people. They know exactly what they want for their people, and they are doing exactly what they want for their people for the benefit of their people. The question that I'm posing to us, do we know what we want for our people? Are we doing what we need for our people? And the answer is, I doubt. Why do I doubt? I doubt because at the end of the entire enterprise, the Chinese president said that he had given, or his government had given, 60 billion United States dollars to 54 African countries. Notionally, therefore, each country would be entitled to no more than 1.5 billion. Half of the presidents who are present in China, each one of them, half of them, can produce 1.5 billion. Sportsmen in Europe and America, including boxers, can earn $1 billion in a single bout. And we are here celebrating and singing the praises of China because they gave us 60 billion. Once again, it is a statement of their ability to recognize what leadership is all about. I'm submitting to us that when we interact with people like the Chinese, there is something to learn from them. We may condemn them at forums such as this, but there is wisdom in asking ourselves, how is it that this country, which about 30 years ago could not feed half our population, has in 30 years during our lifetime succeeded in pulling up nearly 800 million people out of poverty. How is it that every road that is now being built in Africa, whether the road is in Benin or in Nairobi, Kenya, or in Johannesburg, South Africa, or in Kigali in Rwanda, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, there is a Chinese firm whose name I cannot pronounce as the contractor for that song? How is it? How is it that China, which about 30 years ago did not produce a mobile phone, today out of every 10 mobile phone, we are using 6 which are from China? If it is not Techno, it is some other phone. If we are not inviting Jack Ma, we are inviting another Chinese, because we have seen that they have the ability to organize their affairs.
Donald Trump invited Botswana's president to the White House. But what came back reportedly wasn't a yes, and it wasn't even a maybe. Duma Boko declined the invitation from Donald Trump, and his reason was clear. The discussion was expected to touch on Botswana's natural resources, especially its powerful diamond industry. But President Boko reportedly responded with a firm message. If there is any official business to discuss, it should take place in Botswana. We cannot continue traveling abroad to negotiate matters concerning our own resources. AbujaNetworkNews.com.
When I look at Botswana, that little country which in 1966 was called Bechuanaland, which was given to Seseretse Khama as if it was nothing. The only thing that they were famous for was cattle rearing. They did not think much of Botswana. Then 1 year later, Botswana discovered diamond, and the rest is history. They have demonstrated to the world that with your little resources, you can manage those resources effectively. They have demonstrated that you can have a democracy which is a democracy in name. They have had a culture which recognizes that leadership is not a wrestling match. Leadership is an opportunity to serve, and elections are an opportunity in the democratic marketplace where the people give an opportunity to men and women to govern for a period. So between 1966, without the intervention of a coup d'etat, they have had Seseretse Khama govern them. They have had Ketumile Masire govern them. They have had Festus Mogae govern them. They have had Ian Khama govern them. And is the only country on the continent of Africa ever to have had a budget surplus. It can be done.
This is the path that President Trump and the United States has embarked upon. It is the path we ask you here in Europe to join us on. It is a path we have walked together before and hope to walk together again. For 5 centuries, before the end of the Second World War, the West had been expanding. Its missionaries, its pilgrims, its soldiers, its explorers pouring out from its shores to cross oceans, settle new continents, build vast empires extending out across the globe. But in 1945, for the first time since the age of Columbus, it was contracting. Europe was in ruins. Half of it lived behind an iron curtain, and the rest looked like it would soon follow. The great Western empires had entered into terminal decline, accelerated by godless communist revolutions and by anti-colonial uprisings that would transform the world and drape the red hammer and sickle across vast swaths of the map in the years to come. Against that backdrop, then as now, many came to believe that the West's age of dominance had come to an end, and that our future was destined to be a faint and feeble echo of our past. But together, our predecessors recognized that decline was a choice, and it was a choice they refused to make. This is what we did together once before, and this is what President Trump and the United States want to do again now, together with you. And this is why we do not want our allies to be weak, because that makes us weaker. We want allies who can defend themselves so that no adversary will ever be tempted to test our collective strength. This is why we do not want our allies to be shackled by guilt and shame. We want allies who are proud of their culture and of their heritage, who understand that we are heirs to the same great and noble civilization, and who together with us are willing and able to defend it. And this is why we do not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it. For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history. What we want is a reinvigorated alliance that recognizes that what has ailed our societies is not just a set of bad policies, but a malaise of hopelessness and complacency. An alliance the alliance that we want is one that is not paralyzed into inaction by fear. Fear of climate change, fear of war, fear of technology. Instead, we want an alliance that boldly races into the future. And the only fear we have is the fear of the shame of not leaving our nations prouder, stronger, and wealthier for our children.
We hear, Imam, that today, perhaps today, some black hostages and some female hostages will be released from the American embassy compound. Is that true?
The
freedom of the women and blacks will be given. Women are given great dignity in Islam, and the blacks have been oppressed in the United States. Great injustice was done unto them. They were under pressure in the United States. Thus they came here. We are doing this owing to the tenets of Islam. In return, we ask nothing for their freedom. We want the Shah. Carter must return him. The world's international law agree with this principle.
I ask you, as an American and a human being, talking to an Iranian and another human being, is there no room for compromise? Or is Iran now in effect at war with the United States?
حضرت امام آیا جناب عالی یا به طور کلی ایران در حال حاضر با امریکا در حال جنگ هستی؟
جنگ مقصود چی است؟ اگر مقصود این است که
What do you mean by war? If you mean our armies against the United States armies, no, there is no such war. If you mean it is a battle of nerves, it is Carter's doing. We are against war. We are Muslims. We desire peace for all. Carter does not allow this. Carter should put aside his so-called humanism and return the criminal Shah so that we can conclude this matter.
Believe it or not, imperialism anywhere is a threat to humanity as a whole. This was the former Iranian leader, Ayatollah. He was asked about the black people, that were being, captured in Iran, during their revolution time. And yeah, he clearly says, he is going to free the black people without no doubt. He is also going to free women as well without no doubt. He indeed also gave an explanation as well why he is to do that, Not only that, he has connection with a lot of black people as well who were also being murdered on the African continent, all the way from Congo to Burkina Faso, to other African countries. He understood that, imperialism has no limit. To them, they either unalive you if you do not say what they want, or, you cannot have your freedom. And that is what exactly happens. If we see on the continent in Africa, what happens there, the leaders that we are being murdered left and right, and Ayatollah himself in 2026. It's really sad.
To think that MK is a joke can only come from a person who does not know how military and war works. This is not EFF. This is not NP. This is not DP. This is not AP. This is MK, which is the backbone of the military intelligence of ANC. And when that breaks off with its leader, who is Jacob Zuma, only fools who don't know how strategies work would thumbsuck and have lollipops in their mouths. Because this is something. MK's breakaway brings a disparity in ANC between the bourgeoisies and the oligarchs in the financial system and the poor people. Unfortunately, we'll have Ramaphosa protecting the interest of the economically viable and Zuma representing the pain and the tears of those at the bottom. And the populations are not divided equally. For those at the bottom are more than those that are at the top. Unfortunately, those that are at the top are managing those at the bottom. The formation of MK is a cry inside ANC to say we have become too economic, too bourgeoisie, too oligarchy-like, too pro-colonial protection, too white preservative. We've forgotten the people that brought us into power and the reason why the party itself is existing. And anyone who would protect the electorate, economically viable ANC, cannot do so without losing the viability of the common people.
So you do agree that it'll have a very big impact on ANC's vote?
If I was ANC, I would not sleep, not for one day. Because Jacob Zuma, I came here in 1991, by the way. So, and I worked in the reconciliation of peace in Kwamashu, in Mkungundlovu, in Pietermaritzburg, the ANC and IFP wars that were happening there, the taxis and etc. And so I have my fair share of understanding exactly of what role Jacob Zuma played in the reclamation of KwaZulu-Natal into alignment with the ANC, away from IFP, which is a fact that all of us would know, that had Zuma not been present, IFP would have been running KwaZulu-Natal to date. But Zuma, having been from KwaZulu-Natal and being a stalwart of ANC, gave the KwaZulu-Natal an understanding and a sympathetic understanding that he's one of us and he's with the ANC and they're the instruments of power. So if we have him, we will be able to get somewhere. And you undermine that, you throw all that into the dustbin, you victimize Zuma over Nkandla, you don't want to talk about Stellenbosch, Palapala.
But they say they protected him.
But the man is in jail, the man is in prison, the man is in trunk, the man is still answering questions and etc. It's victimization. By no ways am I saying corruption is well, but the corruption you're talking about is far much less than the corruption. Talk to me about PIC, talk to me about this insurance company, these chartered accountants who right now build the money. How many billions? How many billions?
What, Steinhoff?
Steinhoff. How many billions? You tell me that 1.4, 1.6 million that you are crucifying Zuma for does not receive the amount of coverage that Steinhoff, with wiping away all the insurances of every working South African in the country. And he appears only once on newspaper. That's how bad he is. And he disappears. He's sitting in Dubai or in Cape Town in his retirement home. Is this what we are saying South Africa is all about? I mean, the money that was found on Dr. Ramaphosa's couch on its own, vis-a-vis the 700 million which was spent on crucifying Zuma. How do you justify those costs? So I'm not protecting anything, but I'm saying if you say you want justice, then do justice. If you say you want fairness, then do fairness.
President Boko, if as you look at young people in Botswana who are educated and energetic, what's your pitch to them? What's your argument to them to stay in Botswana, not go to South Africa, Europe, the United States?
Young people are generally innovative. They are entrepreneurial. They now have become digital natives, and that presents immense opportunities to them. These opportunities mean they can pretty much operate wherever they are, and they must, as a matter of course, remain within Botswana so that they can then spread their reach and influence to every part from Botswana. And so the opportunities that there are in Botswana, the training, the education, the acquisition of skills, the support, the environment that nurtures them and feeds and fuels their verve and vitality is what Botswana offers and what will power Africa. Africa generally is a very young continent with a median age of 19.3. Botswana's median age is 25. And so with such a population, Africa is poised to rule the world.
So, what are your plans for the world once you rule it?
To make it fairer, to make it more equitable, to ensure that intellectual property is internalized in every part of the African continent, that innovation serves humanity, not just a predatory elite, and that everybody can partake equitably and benefit from the fruits of the economy and the vast opportunities that are available in the world.
Well, I look forward to being treated fairly under your rule. Thank you. President Nagawa, I wonder what lessons you've been in the government of Zimbabwe for decades in various roles, including through a very turbulent period where your predecessor famously kicked out the whites and then the economy tanked and now it's rising again. I wonder if you would summarize the lessons that your country has learned from that experience.
I'm not so sure what you have in mind, but let me say our economy has faced challenges. I'm sure you're aware.
Yes.
Zimbabwe has been under sanctions for decades as a result of us claiming our land from the British and making ourselves independent. We seized the land and gave it to our people. So sanctions were imposed on us. But in spite of all that constraint we have developed, and we are happy that we have developed on our own, and we feel very independent.
Well, some of the land was seized from people who were born there. So I wonder if there's a lesson about targeting people on the basis of their skin color. Do you think?
Can I hear you?
Well, people had their land seized in Zimbabwe who were born in Zimbabwe, and they were targeted on the basis of their race. And I wonder if you think that's good or bad.
No. Land did not belong to a race. It belonged to Zimbabweans. Right. So, when the colonialists took land from us, time came when we asserted ourselves, take back our land. And those who wanted to have land at the same basis as the African people of Zimbabwe remained. But those who felt were superior left.
Okay.
Africa is already experiencing the impact of escalating conflict in the Middle East, with strains on supply chains and higher energy prices. Now we are going to be a victim of conflicts that are taking place far away from where we are. As we have seen with the Russia-Ukraine conflict and during the COVID-19 pandemic, shifting geopolitical sands underscore the vulnerabilities for regional and continental energy security and diversification. This is when we need to wake up, as we have had to all wake up in the light of what was announced during Liberation Day, when tariffs were applied across many countries in the world. What did that do? It woke us all up, and we realized that we now need to diversify our market space. And that is what South Africa is doing right now. We are broadening our market space as a result of the tariff onslaught that has been unleashed on us. So similarly, what is now unfolding in the Middle East when it comes to energy sources, we now need to wake up and say, Africa, wake up and be more reliant. As such, this endeavor is timely and strategic. It is an opportunity to position our continent in a rapidly changing geopolitical context. Africa has what it needs to succeed.
Right now, as you are watching this video, bombs are falling in the Middle East. Iran, Israel and America are locked in a war that is getting worse by the day. Missiles are flying, ships are changing routes, oil is getting harder to move, and somewhere in Nairobi, a matatu driver is wondering why fuel just got more expensive again. And this week, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa stood in front of African leaders and said something so direct, so honest, so unusually blunt for an African summit, that it should have shaken every person in that room out of their chair. He called Africa a victim, not a bystander, not an observer watching events from a safe distance. A victim. His exact words were, "Now we are going to be a victim of conflicts that are taking place far away from where we are." The president of South Africa just stood up and told African leaders to their faces that this continent is getting hurt by other people's wars, that Africa keeps absorbing punches it never threw, that the ordinary people of this continent keep paying prices they never agreed to pay, and he is 100% right. Let us make this simple, what is actually happening right now. The Middle East war involving Iran, Israel and America is not just a war over land or religion or politics. It is happening right next to the most important piece of water in the entire global economy. It is called the Strait of Hormuz. It is a narrow passage between Iran and Oman, barely wide enough on a map, but through that one passage flows 20% of all the oil in the entire world. 1/5 of the world's oil, through one narrow strip of water, that is now sitting in the middle of an active war zone. When oil cannot move freely through that passage, the price of oil goes up everywhere. When the price of oil goes up everywhere, the price of fuel goes up in every African country. When fuel goes up, the cost of transporting food goes up. When transport costs go up, the price of everything in the market goes up. When everything in the market goes up, the person earning the same small wage as last month can suddenly buy less than they could last month. That is not complicated. That is just how the world works. And that is already happening in Africa right now. Ramaphosa said it clearly. Africa is already feeling supply chain strains and higher energy prices because of this conflict already, right now, before the war even gets worse. And it is going to get worse. This has happened before. Africa never learns. Here is what makes this so infuriating. This is not the first time Africa has been hit by somebody else's crisis. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, Africa had nothing to do with it. Africa did not send soldiers. Africa did not fund either side. Africa had absolutely no say in whether that war happened. But Ukraine and Russia together supply a huge portion of the wheat that feeds African nations, particularly in North and East Africa. The moment that war started, wheat prices exploded. Food became scarce. Hunger increased across the continent. Africans who had nothing to do with a war between two European countries started going to bed hungry because of it. When COVID-19 hit the world in 2020, Africa did not create that virus. Africa did not spread it. But when vaccines were developed, Africa was last in the queue. Rich countries bought up all the vaccines for themselves. African economies collapsed. Tourism died. Trade stopped. Unemployment exploded. Young people who had been building something lost everything overnight. Both times, our African leaders gathered at summits and talked about lessons learned. Both times, the speeches were good. Both times, the communiques were long. Both times, nothing fundamentally changed. And now here comes another crisis, this one with the potential to be the most damaging of all three. And Africa is in exactly the same position it was in during Ukraine and COVID. Unprepared, dependent, exposed, vulnerable. Ramaphosa connected all of these dots out loud and in public, which is brave, but bravery in a speech means nothing if it does not lead to action. Museveni said this months ago. Did anyone listen? Ramaphosa is not the first African leader to sound this alarm. Months before Ramaphosa gave this speech, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni stood before African leaders and asked them a question that should have ended that summit immediately and triggered an emergency continental response. He asked, if what is happening in Iran right now happened to Africa, could Africa defend itself? Then he answered his own question. On the ground, Africa is militarily weak. In the air, Africa.
Ah, yes, Africa. What many to this day think is still just one country. Where do we begin with this news? Well, a good start is with this man, Ibrahim Traore, the 37-year-old president of Burkina Faso, an East African country. He has become Africa's most vocal champion of continental unity and independence from Western influence. Naturally, European leaders hate him and his guts and can't stop going on about how he is a military man and not a democratic leader at all. There's not a vote in sight. We hate him, right? Remember, for the Western powers, democracy is one of their most treasured values, unless people choose for themselves something that does not benefit the West. In that case, here, have this dictator who's more in line, you guys aren't ready yet to vote and, choose your own future. We, the enlightened West, will help you out until you're ready. We'll help you out. Democracy, essentially, as long as you choose correctly. There is a correct. Just like how everyone is equal, but some are more equal than others. Now, Traore is having none of that. Despite over 10 assassination attempts on his life, he continues to live and surrounds himself.
If there is a topic that I love talking about, and also speeches that I love speaking to, I mean not speaking but listening to, it's that of Pan-Africanism or Pan-Africanists, because these people ooze wisdom onto our brains. And in today's video, after listening to the president of Botswana, we've listened to Pierre Lumumba, we've listened to a couple of Pan-Africanists in the building, and I can tell you that all this is great. I mean, you see the president of Botswana is like, one day, one time, Africa is going to be a great country. Given that our youths have already been given an opportunity in the digital space, whereby they are able to work anywhere, anytime, without being, asked anything, that freedom is what we are yearning for, and we were yearning for, and finally we have gotten it. So if you summarize the entire script, the entire clips here that we just played, you will actually notice we have African unity in there. You remember PLO Lumumba was saying that if you listen to China speaking, you will actually hear them talking about Africa, not putting into consideration that Africa has 54 countries, because for them they're only talking as if it's a country, how they're going to partner, how they're going to work together, but they're not telling people that in this Africa we have 54 countries and we have several other communities in between. So it's not like people understand each other when it comes to language, but in terms of governance, they want to work with everybody. So African unity is one thing that you will actually notice in every Pan-Africanist video or speech, because unity is power. When you are united, it is so hard to be divided. So my good people, independence is something else or another item that Pan-Africanists want in the building. The independence, like we can actually do our own things without being asked, like, why are you? Remember yesterday we talked about a video whereby Israel wanted Ghana to be part of the war that they are having with Iran, and those are things that we don't really want. We want independence. Like if we are saying that this is what you are planning and this is what you are doing, yeah, let it be. You remember the president of Botswana, he was invited to the White House in America, and they were going to negotiate about the diamonds in Botswana, but the president came back and said, no, on that I will not agree. If there is any business venture that needs to be discussed, it needs to be discussed in Botswana, not in America, because this business should benefit us, not them. So I really was happy about it, and it's awesome. So Africa is stronger when it comes together, but it will become weaker if we are divided. Another thing that you have noticed from these clips that we just played is that many of these people, they are yearning for economic independence. They really want Africa to control its own resources, to control its own industries, and to trade rather than depending on foreign powers. And it's unfortunate that for the longest time we have been having the resources, the raw materials, but they are produced, or they are put, they are added value in other foreign powers, and then come back to Africa and sold to us 3 or 4 times, which is very unfair. I wish that one day we get to have, we get to produce, we get to put it into an end product, we get to add value and then sell now. And I think by doing that, we will be the best, and Africa is going to rule the world. So if you listen to these videos carefully, you will notice something about cultural pride. I mean, Africans are celebrating, and not only Africans, these people are actually proud of our history, our traditions, our languages, and identity. And PLO Lumumba was saying that if you listen to Chinese president, you will hear him talking in their own language. If you go to Germany, they'll actually talk in their own language. Why is it that in Africa we are speaking only in English and not in our own language that everybody understands? And I can tell you, it's just the education system that was instilled in us, a system that was meant for us to be workers and not to be owners of the companies, not to be innovators. It's unfortunate. Even me speaking now, it's not like I'm really proud of it, but we just found the system in place, and unfortunately we went into it without knowing. If we knew, we wouldn't have been into it. So actually, another thing that I have actually noted from the entire clip that we just played is freedom from external control, which many people are really emphasizing on. They want you to focus, they want you to understand, and by doing that, if we want freedom from external control, they believe that you have to reduce political and economic influence from the former colonials. But there is something that our forefathers, our leaders back then signed with these people, with the foreign powers and with the colonial powers, and it is binding. Those rules, those contracts are binding for like million, like 100 years plus. Like, oh my god, it's I don't know even how we are going to get out of that. And also we have pan-Africanists who are really they really support this diaspora connection with other black people around the world. We have the black peoples that were taken from Africa back in the days, so many years ago. They went to be slaves there and they passed through Jamaica, and that is why in the Caribbean you can actually see that most of them are blacks. If you only see the white people, they only like migrated there, but black people, they were taken from us. And pan-Africanists are like, we should keep that connection very strong. They are our own, even if you say that they have never been here. Remember that their ancestors came from Africa. And another thing that I have actually analyzed here is a strong leadership in Africa. If actually you see somebody like Ibrahim Traore, he's a very strong leader. He's somebody who, when he says something, that's what he will do. He implements things that benefits the people of the Burkinabes, and that is what the entire Africa needs: independence. We don't want puppets, because puppets are the ones that are taking us back in the old days. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening up to this point. Kindly subscribe to this amazing channel. I'll see you in the next video.